Hey everyone, it's Brian Stevens with KCK 12, and we're getting our little, as always, technical issues going on with Zoom presentations, or we're using GoToMeeting today, right, Jack? And your screen looks awful.
Yeah.
Adrian, you might need to wipe that off. He's been running around all day talking to other people on his camera, so we'll let him try to see if he can get that cleaned up. If not, he'll go with what he's got. So I'm Brian Stevens. I am the CEO of KCK 12 and a massive data nerd. We believe that all the work that we do, it's super imperative that you have the research and the data behind it to support all of those propositions. I've asked one of our partners, not one of our partners, but one of the partners, Adrian Bond, to come and provide a little bit more insight into the day-to-day affairs. So I'm the data nerd. We do all the research here at our main office. Adrian works with out in the field more, so he can provide a little bit more of that human element, because it's much more than the raw data, and we're going to get into the raw data, but it's how do you interpret the data in a way that you can utilize for your school districts. And that's what's really, really, really important about this stuff. So it's not just the raw data, and we're going to try to give a little bit of interpretation as we go on, right, Adrian?
That's correct.
And as always, we have our producer, Jack Gallup, here. So thanks for, I say producer, he's the one that actually runs all the polls and gets all the data together for us to interpret. So thanks, Jack. So we're going to go pretty quick. I'd like to get this done in about 40 minutes. I've got a few caveats to produce. And as always, if we're going to email this data out after the fact, we'll put it on an e-blast. We'll give you the entire slide deck, not just this one, Jack, but the full slide deck also. They can have all of that. So if you want all of that, you let us know. And if you have questions, well, one person saying they can't hear right now. I'm hoping that that's not the only person. It could be a volume issue, and they might have to shut down and to get back up. So yeah, my mic is showing that it's operating right now. So Kelly, you might want to look on your end a little bit and see if there's an issue there. But if you do have questions, you can use the GoToMeeting. I'll try to pay attention, or you can email us after the fact, and that's Brian, BRIAN, at CASA PS, which stands for publicstrategy.com. And so hopefully Kelly gets that resolved. If not, we'll send out the feed to you afterwards. So I'm going to make sure I pull up my screen here so we can start to get through the data a little quicker, and I can stop looking at my ugly mug on the screen. So this is much better for me. So I'm not going to tell you about CASA. This is a really busy slide. We're going to skip all that. Just so you know where we're coming from, we provide 4 services to traditional public schools, exclusively traditional public schools. We recruit students back to their district from homeschools, charter schools, private schools, neighboring districts, whatever. We retain those students from leaving. We do research like this, and we help you train in those components. And the data is really critical. Now, notice I said recruit students. We don't recruit teachers. We literally focus on getting you more students and keeping your students. So that's our space. Right, AB? Okay, great. So, if you don't know Adrian, he goes by Adrian and AB. I don't know why, but you'll hear me change it up from time to time, but that's the same person. I'm not losing my mind, I don't think. Hey, Jack, just one more thing is Kelly's still indicating a problem with, I don't know if anyone could see other people on the cameras, but you might want to reach out to Kelly directly. Okay. And I'm going to keep running on this thing. So, but I do see that popping up, Kelly. So the goals of every one of our polls, the goals of all of our data is to ensure that we can recruit and retain students. That's the baseline. We've been doing these national polls for a couple of years, and you should consider this data as a baseline, right? Individual districts may vary from these numbers a little bit, but it's always great to have a baseline of data, and so that's what we're going to give you. We ran multiple polls this past year. Our national recruitment and retain survey, which is principally this survey, which tells you what parents and caregivers care about. What are they thinking about? Are they thinking about changing schools? And if so, why, and how do you keep them? And also we've run some polls relating to the actual COVID issues that are going on out there in the world. And so we're kind of punching that together right now. So yeah, we're members of lots of groups, and so we'll move that. Methodology, I want you to understand this is a pro poll. We don't do anything that doesn't meet with the American Association of Public Opinion Research, so it's all scientific, plus or minus 3.5% 95% level of confidence. So great, right? We have traditionally broken our surveys down by Census Bureau region. It seemed like a good way to do it when we originally started. So you have these 4 massive census tracts in the United States. And so we do a national poll, but we also carve it out in those 4 census areas. And the one thing that I thought about, Adrian, doing differently is not breaking it down by census tract in the future, but instead breaking it down to the states that have a lot of competition, the states that have moderate competition for school choice, and the ones that don't have as much. But I don't know if we'll do it that way in the future. I would say if you've got a thought on that, you can email us or let us know. Right now, we're going to keep it to census tract. So you got kind of southern, midwestern, out west, even though California is very different than Wyoming and Montana. But this is the way the Census Bureau does it. So there's your background on that. Wow. So why do we do these surveys? It's because, and I think if you're on this, you know that school choice is becoming more and more prevalent. I know that you know that if you're on this call, but if you want some data to support that, I've added a lot of data on here to support the proposition that school choice is really big. And so I'm going to hit a couple little examples before we get into the data. This is a budget from a charter school that this is what they spent $2.4 million in 1 year on recruiting and retaining students. So they are doing communications research, they are doing research, they're doing media relations, they are doing digital campaigns. I mean, this is big. This is bigger than what any of the biggest school districts should spend on recruiting students. Like this is exorbitant, but that's what they're doing to get your students, right? This is more than I would recommend you spend even with us. All right, that's how I think they're throwing a little bit of good money after bad money on this one, but it's crazy, right? Here's another one. Yeah, we got good data. We do our research, right? Here's one that happened. Well, this is in 2018, so it's a couple years old. They spent $850,000 in. It was only in like 2 or 3 months, September, October, November. So it was 3 months. $850,000 on television ads, radio, print. They are recruiting your students. They are actively running campaigns to do this. So that's why competition is fierce. And look, I'm not going to get into the data slides. This isn't ours. This is the U.S. Department of Education's data sources. But just by way of background, you know that there are more charter schools, elementary schools, and that's only one bucket. Now you got virtual schools and home schools and private. You've had private schools for a long time, and the religious schools, absolutely, and the neighboring districts with open enrollment. So there's all these ways to compete, and that's why this data is valuable. So let's get in to the actual data. I love this slide. Jack put this in here for me because these are the most prevalent areas fighting for school choice, and you'll notice that California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, and then down to Florida is a really hot button. But we know this, more and more competition's coming, and it's coming across the board. And I really want to get into this virtual versus in-person school today. I've got some strong feelings that I didn't have on that 6 months ago. And once we get into the data, we'll be able to really dig into this. And really, one really pressing point is, I'm not your doctor. Right? I can't tell you the safety concerns regarding COVID, and the vaccines are coming out, and it's doing better in different states. But when you're looking at this data, the one thing that struck me is I'm going to encourage you to get your students back into school, not because of safety. Like, you have to factor in those safety concerns. I'm just one opinion on this, but the competitive advantage you have is being present and available. And
I'll push back on you, Brian. One of the things that I see that is extremely critical is a lot of these districts having the opportunity to have some kind of a hybrid program that would allow for those students that have gotten used to being on the virtual platform to continue being on there. And that's my
look. I think you're a little crazy. And we've been fighting about this, and I knew he was going to call me out today for the last few weeks, because we're working with districts right now. Should they do virtual? If so, what do they need to provide to stay competitive? But I have a concern about that. It's your competitive advantage as a traditional school, and I think we have some data points on this. So I think you're nuts. But it's always the way to interpret the data, right? Okay, and you like to give people options.
That's right.
I don't know. But we'll dig into this. I'm skipping a lot of these slides right now because this is not the point of this meeting. Is the debate about selling? We can jump into that if you ever want to, about what the competition's doing. We just gave a presentation for the Texas Association on what your competition's doing, and so I just want you to know they're out there, they're competing. I want you to have the tools necessary so that you know you compete too. But let's get, I really want to get to the data here because we got to do this in like 30 more minutes. I run a really fast ship on this. So we're jumping. Wow, there's a lot of competition out there. Okay, national survey results. Finally, Brian, you could have probably skipped faster if you would have used your finger more. Okay, so we're gonna hit the top lines as we go, but let's jump right into some of your big takeaways. This is a good number. 80% of respondents of our poll, and this is nationwide data, not broken down by region, but it was really consistent with every census tract region. 80% of respondents say traditional local public schools prepare their students for success.
And I guess,
well done. I think that's well done. I think that's awesome. And this is, I just want to compare this to one other point, Adrian, I'll let you jump in, is 59% of respondents think that charter schools prepare their students for success. So more people believe in traditional public schools than in this data. There's some caveats, but what were you going to point out?
I'm sitting there looking at the slides, and one of the things, if I'm in a superintendent's shoes, or I'm on the district side, I'm wondering, how do you get that 80% to 85% or 90%? That would be my concern.
I got you. So what you're saying, what you're hearing is that people want to increase their satisfaction scores, right? They want to increase. Okay, it's a trap. Don't try to increase your satisfaction scores, your approval rating beyond 80. It is, and here's the reason. You can use political examples, customer service examples. It's 11 to 14% of the people hate everything. In every poll we've ever done, we've been doing it for 20 years now, okay, I'm getting old, is 11 to 14 hate everything. I mean, you literally, Adrian, could say, do you believe in feeding poor children that have no food? And you're going to get 10, 11% of the people that say no. I know you're shocked right now, but it's true, because they'd be like, they need to feed themselves, they need to pull themselves up, whatever the rationale is. Some people are just against everything. That 80% number is great. That is 83% is like a unicorn. It just doesn't happen. So when you're above 75%, I would say congratulations. You've done all you need to do. Keep that up. But now you need to go out there and run campaigns, because and this is a great point, how are charter schools getting more students and growing with 59% compared to your 80? It's because they're running those campaigns. They're running active recruitment campaigns, making the ask, doing all the I've got a couple slides talking about what they're doing to run the campaigns, but they're better at making the ask. They're better at pounding their own drum. They're better at saying, look at me, how awesome I am. So it's the old McDonald's analogy, isn't it? McDonald's does not have an 80% approval rating on how great their hamburgers are. I'm sorry, they don't. Like, I don't know what the stat is, but it is not 80% of the people that think they have the best hamburgers, but they sure sell the most. And it's because they make the sell. So they got whatever percentage they need. You making a great hamburger, you're educating the students, you're going to treat them for success. Now you got to start pounding on your drum a little bit more. And I know educators aren't used to doing that, but the charter schools are. And that's why with 59%, they bagging students left and right, and they're the newest, coolest thing, and so that's true too. So I would say 80% is enough. Don't try to shoot for 85. It's not a great return on your investment dollars. It's not worth the energy to try to get it up to that. Somebody might get 85%, but the issue is when you're at 85% plus, your support might be a mile wide, but it's only an inch deep. And as soon as you have an issue, there's no way that the people really support you vigorously. And I'm probably stretching that out too much. If you have some individual thoughts, we can get into that one-on-one, but 80% is great. Like, be really happy. And if you do individual polls in your districts or your areas, that's your baseline. 80% is a baseline. How are you? If you had 60%, you got some work to do. Yeah, like, you need to work on letting people know what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. And if it doesn't make sense, I'll talk really, really fast because I'm a lawyer, right, and an old soldier. I'll talk fast enough that you can't keep up. That way I don't get too many questions. So thanks. Okay, so this was a really interesting data point from last year. So I'm going to kind of pause on this one. Is since 2019, there's been a 20% drop on how parents feel about charter schools and their preparation for their children's success versus public schools, which have gone up 10%. Those are big jumps. I'm going to attribute a lot of that swing to COVID. And I think what happened was, and we saw this with at least a lot of, so it's anecdotal, but if you think about your own district, did you start to communicate better with the parents because of the stress of not having the kids in the district? Did you start having more email communication, more text messages? You couldn't send stuff in their bags if they were all at home. But what we saw is a lot of districts really started to include the parents on email communications. So the parents started to develop confidence. So over communicating during the pandemic, and a matter of fact, we did a webinar with Mary from Henry County and her over communicating, and with Shelby County schools on them over communicating how they were building more trust. So I think over communication from traditional public schools really went well during COVID, and they saw a bump in the trust factor. And that's what this is. It's a trust factor. Charter schools dropped mainly because they were already communicating pretty well and they couldn't really go up. I'm not exactly sure what to attribute the full 20% to. Maybe they ghosted out. Maybe they disappeared for a while. Now this, if you could swing this much in one year, you could swing back next year just as bad. So continue your great communications. Continue your great communications. I'm sorry, what's that?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that that I think all school districts need to be very conscious about is controlling their own narrative. One of the things you brought up, Brian, was about the competitive advantage, and I know we've got some slides, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I think if you are going to go in and have in-person school, you got to sell it. You've got to sell that competitive advantage.
Okay, yeah, I know you're chomping at the bit, Adrian, to get back into this. Do you go with a virtual model, a hybrid model, or in person? Can you give me a minute? Can you give me a minute? You're always trying to sell that stuff. Now, I do agree with you. Whatever you're doing, please over communicate. And the one thing that Mary said that was so pro was she was pushing the stuff out to the Chamber of Commerce and to Kiwanis and Rotary groups so they could spread the message of what you're doing too. It's really, really difficult to get the word out to people because they're so busy. Everyone's being over communicated with all the time. So whatever you decide, to your point, make sure you're communicating out over and over and over and over and over. And I'm gonna say it. Did I say it 7 times?
I think it was 6.
Okay.
One more time.
Over. I mean, 7 is that magical number of communications before people start to even know that you exist. And I think that the public schools did a good job last year of increasing their communication. Please keep doing that. It's working. It's working. That's awesome. Okay, great. I think it's great. Oh, now here's the number that terrifies me. This 53% of respondents think that homeschools prepare their students for success. Now, I should say this. Preparing students for success is the #1 driver on why a parent picks a school. We're going to get into that a little bit, but you need to know that's the #1 driver. If they believe that your school will prepare them for success, that's the foundation. Then they're going to start to explore whether or not you're a safe school and a good school and they like you and it's a convenient and their after school programs and food, all these other things. But if you don't prepare them for success, I know you do. If you don't show them and they don't believe that you prepare them for success, nothing else matters. So that's the #1 driver, right? So this is the terrifying number. And this is why I disagree with you, Adrian. 53% of respondents think that homeschools prepare their students for success. This number is dramatically moving up. And people are getting more and more comfortable with having their kidlets be schooled at home. Well, people are creatures of habit. And if a homeschool can show you, especially if there's vouchers or there's a payment option in certain states, and more coming, the homeschool lobbyists are trying to get more and more vouchers in more and more states. So it's coming. Let's assume for a minute that you offer a public school virtual only option and a homeschool doesn't. Well, whoever communicates that they provide the best resource is going to do it. And I'm telling you, it's hard to compete with homeschools. Not from a set them up for success, but the technology packages, they're years in front of us on that. And I'm trying to figure out, Adrian, what is the competitive advantage of a traditional public school offering homeschool versus a homeschool? Where's the competitive advantage for the traditional public school?
Well, I think the competitive advantage is the fact that you offer in-person learning. There are additional factors outside of just going to school. You've got the athletics, the extracurricular activities, the clubs. All of those play a part that a lot of the homeschools don't have the opportunity to provide.
Okay, well, some homeschools do though. They have their own sports teams, their own leagues. I think they're smaller, their groups, the moms really or the dads try to really coordinate that activity. They do, but it's not the same level.
That's right.
But I do think a competitive advantage of traditional public schools are extracurricular activities. Homeschools are going to do a better job than they have been doing that. They're going to be working on that. So okay, so let's assume you decide to stick with a hybrid. What we have found is a lot of people are saying, well, I do the hybrid, but my kid doesn't like it. My kid decides, now that's anecdotal, but you need to be tracking that. If you give a hybrid option, you're seeing more and more people radiate towards not coming to school. They do some of the after school programs, but the kids, I mean, come on, man, they're kids. Sit in their pajamas, get their laptops open, do it on their phones, and just be left alone, and they can text with their friends and do all that. That terrifies me, because if they get in a habit, then they will start pairing, well, your homeschool versus their virtual school versus the charter school's virtual school. Your competitive advantage for traditional public schools is engagement and activity and seeing other people, man. Like you're not going to get 100% of the people anymore. You're going to have to let people that just want a pure homeschool experience go, I think. Hybrid maybe, but I get a little nervous that if you allow them to go, like in our school, my daughter had the choice of doing hybrid or staying home. And you know what she picked? Hybrid. And then she didn't like the hybrid. So no, what's she doing now? She's staying at home. Holy cow. Next year, what if she decides, man, I found this homeschool. I could just do this and not ever go back. I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but the data shows me that you need to be thinking about it. The data shows me we need to be working out a plan for what the rollout is. And so when you give them the option of staying home virtually, you might lose them permanently in another year or two. If I was running a homeschool or virtual school charter school, I would absolutely, as a competitive advantage, really get into providing unbelievable value. And I'd give them a laptop, I'd give them an iPad or something like that. I'd give them the technology. I'd help pay for their freaking internet, all things you probably don't have the resources to do. So I don't know what the right answer is right now, but I really hope that you're baking this in and thinking you're playing chess, not tic-tac-toe. And you need to be thinking long-term about the answers of the student. If the student loves virtual, what can they do to steal them that we can't offer? And you lose the competitive advantage of the activities and the sports programs and the after-school band and track. And if they can offer some sort of semblance of that, or if your school district lets the homeschool people come into all your sports programs, you've lost your competitive advantage. And so I really want you to be thinking about this as you move forward. And I know that we're doing a couple polls for some individual districts that are exploring this a little bit more.
Yeah, that's
right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just want you to be aware of this, that you can have devastating effects down the road because you're not thinking about 2 years from now. All right. I probably talked about this slide enough, but I do want you to have some real takeaways today and exploring the potential impacts, pro and con, of virtual schools long term. When you create a habit with a person, it's hard to break that habit. So, all right, let's keep rolling. Right, Jack?
Right.
All right, Jack says to keep rolling. He was doing this 3 times for me. All right, Jack, we've got it. So what are the 4 main drivers that make a person choose a school district? And this is national poll, and you could certainly compare your own district for this, but we by and large found that these are the top 4 main drivers. Is that the top one is always that the child will be successful, that you're preparing the child for success. So all of your communications, all of your earned media, all of your campaigns have got to beat this down. And you don't have to be super overt about it, but it needs to be an undercurrent. They're going to be ready. It doesn't mean college ready, but that they're going to be successful at life, whatever that is. Some districts want to be college ready. Some want them to have a great paying job. I mean, an $80,000 welding job to me is better than a $35,000 college degree from, basket weaving pro or whatever you go to college for nowadays, right? And so success, whatever success means to the parents, you have to convey that you're going to take care of. Oh, there was a district in Texas that created a program. This was 3 years ago, all for like running drones in big warehouses, because they had like Amazon warehouses and stuff. That's a really cool job, and it was fun. They learned technology and all that. So the second driver is safety. I want my kids to be successful, but most of all, what do parents want? Their kids to be safe. Now, prior to COVID, safety meant bullying, shooting, kidnapping. Now you have this whole, are they going to be safe for COVID? And this was a big issue last semester. Will it be a big semester in the fall? I don't know yet. We'll probably do another poll on the effects of COVID. Jack's kind of nodding his head down. We love to get the data, so it helps us recruit and retain more students to your districts by having baselines. And we'll probably do that. I really want to know the top safety concerns, and we need to drill into that safety concern issue. But if you don't convey that you got a safe environment with whatever their version of safe is, you're missing the bucket. Now look at this third one. My teacher keeps me informed of my child's academic and extracurricular activities. These are all in the 70s, which, by the way, are almost unicorn level, right? Almost unicorn. Is my teacher keeps me informed. And what have districts this year been doing more of? Keeping the parents informed because of the pandemic. And that's why you're up 10%, man. Keep that up. I think that's awesome. Now, this fourth one, I think, is old data. I don't want Adrian to have one. I don't want to let him get away with one thing right now, which is, as long as COVID continues, the school offers some sort of virtual learning option, maybe hybrid. I think this is going to work itself out with vaccines and different states issues, but you need to be aware that that's been something that we've been dealing with, right? So those are the four main drivers, and everything else after that is supplemental. Do you offer great transportation? Do you after school? Do you offer breakfast? It all depends on the parent group, and it's all very, very individual based. This is historically true across the entire nation right now, right? So pretty cool. So I hope that you're communicating with that. Oh, you got me on this. So that safety concern, this was like an advertisement that we saw. We've seen a lot of others from charter schools and homeschools, and this was teens busted. Teens were busted with more than $3,000 worth of heroin and cocaine. I don't know how much heroin and cocaine that is. I'm not a big heroin, cocaine guy. I don't know if it's like a little bag or a big bag. I don't know if it's like buckets. I think I'm a little naive. I don't want you guys to answer that. I don't want anyone to answer that question. Nobody on this call should know that. We're not in police, but they're using that one teen was busted with drugs. You don't think there are drugs in private schools? There are drugs in private schools. Yeah, there are drugs in Catholic schools and they're in charter schools and public schools. There are drugs everywhere. But they literally use this as a way. Don't you worry about your student. Enroll with us. They literally are using that safety concern of your student's going to be involved in drugs if you go to public schools. You're going to see drugs everywhere. And there was another one where it wasn't the drugs, but it was something about like sex. It was like a sex thing. Like they're teenagers. They're gonna. I don't want to get involved in this argument with you. I don't want to have a battle with you. But if you think that you can go to a certain type of school and not be exposed with TV and everything else to drugs, alcohol, and sex, I'd be really curious. That school must be on an island somewhere. But wait a minute, that doesn't work either, because even on the Blue Lagoon, a TV show that shows you my age, I think it came out in the 80s, 2 kids were on there with no public schools or charter schools, and they still figured out about sex. So I guess my point is that they're using fear as a tactic to get your students. So safety concerns and success. So don't Don't forget about that, right? This one really upset me here. Oh, and they got this sense of urgency. Class is almost full. No, they're not. No, they're not. But it's a good tactic. It's something you ought to leverage. Sense of urgency, right? Okay. Let's keep rolling. I've got about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll make sure to kind of do a closeout with you. So this number is how many parents are parents, caregivers, grandparents, whoever's in charge of a student. We use the term parents, but we certainly understand that could vary in household. 40% of caregivers are considering switching schools next year in the fall. 40%. This is an all-time high number, but it's been slowly creeping up. I think the first time we did a poll on this particular matter was 5 or 6 years ago, and it was in the low 30s. Last year was about 38, 39. What was it, Jack? Yes. Okay, 38. So it was 38%. So it's within the margin of error, that 38 to 40%, still within that margin of error, but it's slowly creeping up, and it's just because there's more competition. I mean, people are beginning to realize more and more they have choices, and they're looking around. It doesn't mean 40% will actually switch. It just means they're considering. Now, where is the most competition? Urban areas. And it's because, well, urban areas have the most competition. So 52% of the parents in urban areas so a little over half are likely are considering switching. It's just because they got more options.
But one thing, Brian, I'll point out is, I'm looking at this slide and I see that the rural and the suburban districts, they flip-flop, and that's interesting. We've got a few rural clients, districts that we work with, and one of their largest complaints is they're getting pounded by the homeschools.
Ooh, oh, okay.
So
I did not catch this in the crosstabs, and so it used to be the most competitive big cities, mid-sized cities, and the smaller the population, the less choices there were, so the less competition, the less likely they were to switch. And you're right that if I'm looking at this graph, and I don't see the exact percentages on here. Oh, well, it's real close. So I actually do have it on here, 30% and 28%, I guess is what it is. So what homeschools are figuring out is they can communicate with the rural people via technology, digital ads, social media, all that stuff, all the things that any great can, but you got to use all these different vehicles to reach the audience wherever they are. But now they're realizing, it used to be you wouldn't create a charter school in an area with 1,000 kids because you just can't get enough money, because charter schools are paid just like you are per student. Like, I think the national average is 7,800, but some districts are 4,800 and some are 13,000. But so they would go after the money, and that was in the big urban cores. But so watch out. That, I think that gives me my point. I think you're losing this argument. Maybe, I don't know yet. We'll keep haggling about it. The good news is, I don't know if it's good news. It's just data. It's not news. It used to be that traditional public schools were the most likely to see their students leave. Now it's charter schools. That'll swing. That'll go back and forth, especially as all these different types of schools stabilize a little bit more. They'll kind of get their base level of support, and then people that are floaters will float back and forth. And as there's more competition, people will constantly be going after it, right? Private schools are a little different. That's a real personal decision. If you want to cut a big check and kind of pay as your own for your education, you believe the reason why they do this, they believe the schools are going to set their students up for more success. One, they are going to make sure they're safe. Two, and then all those ancillary reasons there. But that's primarily why they do it. Once again, it's the hamburger, the McDonald's hamburger. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means there's a belief or perception that exists. And so that's really the right way to look at the data. I'm going to pop down a little bit. Oh, wait, I do want to pause on this. This is a leadership question. So here's another takeaway. Here's a pro takeaway of the day for you. If they don't trust the leadership of whatever school it is, they're less likely to come. So you're at 70–80%, they trust the school district has their students' best interests in mind, but do they trust the leader? And if they don't know the leader, they're going to have a hard time trusting the leader. So if a lot of times when we come in to run recruitment or retention campaigns, we focus on the students and the parents, and the internal communication department then gets freed up to really advocate for the C-suite people, the superintendent, the chief of staff, the directors, maybe some high-level principals, to really control earned media, to really promote those internal things about what they're doing. And that is so important. And so I would say that you need to spend time on that. And you need to highlight the accomplishments of the leaders. And I know what's going to happen. The leader's going to say, I don't want awards. It's about the kids. Well, yeah, but I got to get you awards, Dr. X, Y, or Z. I've got to get you awards so that we build confidence in the team. And if they don't know who you are, if they don't have confidence, they're less likely. So we need to promote you a little bit. We need to promote some of our top level principals, top staff. And so don't neglect that in just promoting the district. You're really promoting people. Even, some great students that have done well, but this is a leadership question. You're going to have to pound the drum of the leaders. You have to do it whether they like it or not. It's really, really important. So there's another, hopefully, big takeaway for you if you weren't doing it. And they always fight me on it, but you got to do it for them. I'm not going to dig too much into the COVID related poll. I put some data here. So when we email this is like people were concerned about COVID. Some of this information is a little old about what they want. So I'm going to kind of, this is about the hybrid stuff. If anybody has individual questions, you can email me, Brian, BRIAN, at CAISSAPS.com, CAISSAPS.com, or the email that we sent out for this link, and you'll put it in the next e-blast. You'll put how to contact you, Jack.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, you want to dig into some of this and compare it to some of your own data, or if you want to create data, let us know, right? So we can kind of compare that. I think some of this data is not quite as up to date, especially now that the vaccines are starting to roll. So, data is a real interesting thing. It's a snapshot in time. And when a lot of scenarios happen between when the data occurred, like the vaccines are finally rolling out now, some of this will be less impactful. So I know when we put this together, I didn't have the confidence level in the vaccines that we have now, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I would say this, that I'm only going to pause here, Adrian, because it supports my proposition. Well, it supports your hybrid proposition too, which is 67% of the parents, when we all started going to virtual learning, got really stressed out. 67 is a high number, about keeping their kids. They were concerned about how were their kids going to be engaged in good activities. So whatever you do, hybrid or not, you better really focus on the activities. You can't have them shut down from activities. You can't tell band and football and all that other stuff not to occur. This is what they want. And they probably want them out of the damn house too, right? So, I don't know, but so if you're going to do a hybrid model, to Adrian's point, focus on what you're going to do with those activities, because that's your competitive advantage, right?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Maybe that does support that you're smart and pretty. Okay. If you're going to do virtual learning, the hybrid model, man, this is where I get concerned about the competitiveness. Man, they're giving away laptops at online schools and home schools and stuff, and maybe even access. So you got to make sure you're dealing with this. Do they have computers? Do they have internet access? Are you going to record the lessons? How are you going to have access to the teachers? Those are all the top drivers. And really anything 50% or over is what's considered big enough to care about. Access to their child is 47%, but on earlier stuff, people really liked it when their teachers spoke to them a lot more, and that was well over 50. So that's why I left that one on there for you. Okay, I'm gonna not go over any of this. I just want you to know that what we did provide you with is the questions at the end of this are the actual questions that we asked, and I bogart them, take them, use them for yourselves. I mean, if you want us to do the poll, we'd be super excited to do the work and to hang out with you and teach you all this stuff. But you can take these questions. One thing that I hate is bad polls, and you can automatically know a bad poll if you see compound questions, right? Compound questions are too complexity, where people aren't paying that much attention to these things. So you got to make them really simple, concrete, and ensure that you're asking one question at a time, and that the question you ask allows you to do something with the data. All too often people ask questions they're really curious about, but they can't utilize it. And so every question that we ask, if you find out something based on this question, can you then go and do something about it to recruit or retain students, right? At least that's the way this poll was designed. So look, bogart the questions, utilize them. I mean, you could give me credit or something by saying, you know, Brian and Jack drafted these or something, but I want you to have all that information. Oh, look, the emails are at the end. So you can email me or Adrian on the slide deck, and it's right there. Sorry, Jack, I didn't see that before. So that's a lot of data in 40 minutes. And I like to keep these things, and you're gonna know what a massive nerd I am. An hour-long webinar should be 42 minutes. An hour-long webinar should be 42 minutes. Mainly because after about 43, 45 minutes, people start dropping off like flies. And we've kept a nice attendee count right now, but I know people are now worried about going to the bathroom and getting their lunch and doing other things. So I like to do really fast ones. It doesn't mean that if you want to have a one-on-one with us, that we won't walk through some of these elements individually with you. I'll do that. I mean, that's just fun, and I'll learn from you and you'll learn from me. And that's how we'll go. So I think that some of the big takeaways are, one, parents or caregivers are thinking about switching as much as they ever have. Competition's out there, you know that. Number two, if you're going to do a hybrid plan, as Adrian suggests, you better communicate it out really, really well. And I'm going to encourage you to do something with the after school activities or before school activities to keep people engaged, right? I think that those are really massive drivers. Third big takeaway is, if you're in the rural areas, you're going to start to be susceptible to competition now. It's coming. Years past, not a big of a deal, but you better start kind of getting ready. It's home schools, virtual schools are coming now, and I think that's going to be a big takeaway. Did you have any additional takeaways?
No, I think, again, one of the things that I can't stress upon more is just controlling your own narrative. Charters, privates, they do a great job of explaining why they are better than you all without the facts oftentimes. And so I want to ensure that all of our traditional public schools are doing the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not that they commit more resources to it because they have to. They were the new kids on the block, but they're not stuck in. Since it's a new model, they can be a little bit more flexible. It's not that they're necessarily better at communicating, but maybe they have $2.4 million for that little school district, that little chart. That's too much. 850 seems like a lot that seems like a lot too. They're overkilling it a little bit, but earned media, when I say earned media, free media for you communications experts, you know what I mean, but for you superintendents that are on, advocate your strengths, start doing op-eds, start doing e-blasts, start to go, get your top chiefs or, to go on a little road show from time to time to the chambers and Kiwanis and business clubs. I mean, you got to sell what you're doing right. I know you want to focus on training the kidlets, and that's awesome. And I'm just going to keep pushing you to also, you got to let people know that you're doing a good job, and that'll help us recruit more students for you and to retain. So I hope you're doing great out there. I hope you got some value in this. We'll send the full deck out, and it's been 43 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up right now. So thank you very much, and be on the lookout for our next poll that Jack's going to produce for us in the next couple months. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.